Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar from EcoProd. I am just going to pause for a few seconds just to make sure that we have got the people joining correctly from the waiting room, and indeed that I have pressed all the right buttons. Brilliant, I can see people joining, that's great. Okay, so our topic this morning is how to reduce water consumption in your business. Before we kind of launch into the content, a few housekeeping kind of FAQs. We are recording the session today, so once we're finished here, we will get this processed and there'll be an email that comes out to you that has a link to watch the full video back, including the Q&A. There'll also be an opportunity from that email to download the slides that we're using, so everything that you see here, including any kind of live links on the screen and what have you, will be available to you afterwards. Please do ask questions. You will notice as you join that your lines are all muted automatically, but there is a little Q&A function in Zoom. If you hover your mouse at the bottom of the window, the Zoom window, there's a Q&A button. If you pop questions in that Q&A as they occur to you, we'll be answering questions in the background as we go through, but at the end of the presentation, then all of our panelists will stay on the line and I can read those questions out and we can have a bit of a discussion and what have you. So please do ask all the questions, any questions that occur to you as we're going through, and we'll make sure that they are covered one way or the other. So you will have seen the agenda from your invitation and in all of the materials, but just to recap, we're going to whistle through really why water saving is important, what the kind of future impact of water shortages is on businesses overall. And then we're going to structure a lot of our content around these kind of three pillars of water saving that EcoProd work around. So using less water, wasting less water, and then reusing and recycling your water. We're going to wrap up at the end with a little bit about what a water management strategy is, where to start with one, why it's important to have one, and finish off with a little bit about how we can help you with any and all of these aspects of water saving. So you have got four of us on the panel today. My name is Rachel. I'm mostly in the background fielding questions, dealing with technicalities and so on. Marcus, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. And hello to everybody that's joined us. My name is Marcus Rose. I'm the founder and managing director of EcoProd. My background is mechanical and electrical training, so I typically get drafted in on the technical side of application of products to help clients. Over to you, Jacob.
Hello, I'm Jacob Tompkins. I'm a water specialist and I've been doing water for about 35 years. I don't know much else, mainly on the academic side, so looking at water strategies, and I'm a hydrogeologist by background. I'm a visiting prof at Exeter University and do a whole load of stuff around new water technologies, and I'm delighted to be working with EcoProd on the sort of wider water strategy stuff.
And I just interject, Jacob does look like his picture is just his camera's not working today. So Paul.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm the sales director at EcoProd. A little bit about me. I'm in my fourth decade working in the commercial arena, and my involvement with water reduction, carbon reduction has been since the early 2000s. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I hope you share that passion with us today and learn a little bit with us on this journey through a webinar. Thank you.
So, to give the audience a bit of an overview as to EcoProd, I think the statement at the bottom of the slide there really encapsulates what we do. We can significantly help you cut your water use, and it really is embedded in the name in the center of the circular economy there. That image you see, EcoProd, stands for ecological and economical product. As you've probably picked up already, our focus and passion is water saving, but then also related to that, energy saving and carbon footprint reduction. We represent a number of global brands here in the UK region, some exclusively, and with the manufacturers we represent, we are on a continuous journey of improvement. Some of the brand names you see there, like Euromat and Guardio, they are accredited into the Solar Impulse Foundation. Conti have won many awards for design and water reduction technology. Likewise, Messiah, they have won many awards around water quality hygiene. So as you can see, what we represent at EcoProd is basically the background of the 3 pillars of water saving that we're going to go through today, but it fits very neatly and completely into the circular economy. And I can honestly say that all the manufacturers that work with us here in the UK, we're in total consonance and we completely align with each other. So there's an example on your screen there of some of our clients here in the UK. So in working with EcoProd, I think you can probably say you're going to be in very good company. I'm now going to hand over to Jacob, and he's going to go through why water saving is very important.
Right, thanks, Marcus. Yeah, so why is this important? You've all heard about the global water crisis, I'm sure. What does this actually mean in the UK? Well, we're already starting to see the impact of water shortages due to climate change. You probably saw that just yesterday there was another hosepipe ban announced in Devon that will run probably until December. The problem we have is daily use is very, very high. We need to reduce consumption from 140 litres per person to 100 litres per person. Think about that in terms of 1 litre bottles. That's per person. That's a lot of water. That's without taking into account manufacturing or anything like that. That's just personal use. If you combine that with population growth and climate change, meaning there's going to be less water and increased use, we have a major problem. But cutting water use can also save money and reduce your carbon footprint. So it's very, very important for companies because there will be less supply, prices will go up, and you'll be expected to do more. There are also issues around embedded energy and embedded water use, and there are costs associated with heating, pumping, and cooling. So even if you think your water bill is small compared to your energy bill, a lot of your energy bill is related to water. If you just look at home, as soon as you turn the kettle on, your energy monitor goes through the roof. And think about that on a large scale. Think about industrial boilers, think about ice production, think about air conditioning, and think about having to pump water around a site. So water is a lot more important than people think, and saving water is essential for the country, for the planet, and for environment, but also for your pocket. Can we have the next slide? Thanks. Okay, so when we say about climate change, what do we mean? Well, this is the long-term average for rainfall for last year compared to the 91 to 2020 average. Brown means there's a lot less. So we're seeing around 50% less rainfall, which means there's a depletion. Now, what that means is it doesn't refill aquifers, the underground rocks, it doesn't refill reservoirs, and it means that river flows are low. This is where water companies get the water that they supply to businesses, agriculture, and domestic properties from. And if they have to introduce cuts, they have a statutory duty to supply homes. There's not going to be an issue over agriculture. The one area they will cut first will be businesses. So just think about what your business would do if you didn't have any water, or if there were rotor cuts, or if there was even a drop in pressure. And this is the long-term situation. But if we look just for the past couple of months, so this is rainfall for February. So again, brown, we're talking dramatically lower, 20% of the expected rainfall. This was the driest February for 30 years. But then if we look at March, it was the wettest March for 40 years. So what we're seeing, imagine the climate being like a pendulum. It's just swinging all over the place. This is what climate change means. We can no longer predict based on long-term averages what kind of rainfall we're going to have. And what these two graphs mean are floods and droughts. Now, ironically, despite the fact that there's a huge amount of blue in Cornwall in March, Cornwall is still in major drought. Cornwall and Devon are in major drought, and it's looking like significant drought across the whole of the country this summer, unless it continues raining like it did in March. The bottom line is we don't know, but it is likely there will be interruptions in supply, and it's definitely likely that water prices will increase in the long term, and there will be less certainty. So I would suggest that all businesses need to look at their water security and their water costs. Thanks, Marcus. So as Marcus said earlier, we're divided into 3 pillars. The first one is how do we use less water? And that's where EcoProd have a range of solutions that we can offer.
Thanks, Jacob. I want to just touch on urinals and toilets very briefly. Obviously, we've got further details we can give you at a later date if you're interested. So waterless urinal technology has developed over the last 20, 30 years. And anyone that's dealt with the technology in the past will see that today's technology is as good, as equal and better than a standard traditional urinal. These should be installed in all commercial organisations, in our opinion, when you're looking at a regular savings of 100,000 litres of water per year. I find it hard to find the excuse not to actually move them across, because they're no harder to keep and look after. And in fact, from a manufacturing point of view, to actually leave the factory as a polycarbonate solution, as a carbon neutral from the factory, can also help your carbon footprint. And most importantly, they offer a guaranteed odour-free toilet environment, providing that following the simple cleaning advice and maintenance is followed. When it comes to toilets, I think many buildings across the UK, both domestic and commercial these days, will look at dual flush switching, which typically provide a 6 litre and a 3 litre flush provision, which can be reduced to a 4 and 2.6, depending. The key thing is to make sure that the soil pipe is cleaned and nothing is blocking the water escape, going back to the waste. However, is it time now to also consider going back to a single flush, maybe possibly around a 4 litre delivery? Because we find that many people are not happy with the dual flush solution, and they end up pressing both the large button and the small button, which kind of defeats the object of why they were actually supplied in the first. And I think every client should consider their own user group, the abilities of the user group. So hospitals obviously may have people that haven't got the ability to do a dual flush, care homes, etc. But we need to consider through design what is the best solution for people. And the other option is something new to the UK market, which has been in Europe for many years, which is direct flushing without the need for stored water, may be a good option, especially when there's large demand, such as a stadium or an event location. Next slide, Marcus. Water saving taps. Okay. There are many electronic taps operated by sensors on the market these days. And unfortunately, many of us on this webinar today may have experienced inferior products that do not operate correctly, or possibly not at all. Selecting the correct product requires consideration of the environment, consideration of the users, consideration of the football demand 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Taps that can significantly reduce the volume of water are absolutely key to the environment without depleting the user experience of washing their hands. Taps that can provide energy reductions on your bills. Think of taps flowing in cinemas, day after day, film after film, left flowing, using energy on hot water side. The other option is taps that only provide a cold water feed with a spray form, so that you actually reduce your heating bills completely, 100% saving on heating. Sensor taps within our range also have maintenance advantages, which can save time on PPMs for buildings and can provide companies with water usage data, and lastly, improved waterways to avoid stagnation. Next slide, please, Marcus. The range of showers available today is huge. However, we would always recommend considering both capital expenditure and maintenance costs as a combined finance package when looking at purchasing showers for your buildings. Thoughts should be to the installation and best practice for your company. Do you want concealed showers in the wall, which might be difficult to access? Do you want surface mount solutions, which may require building works repairs when taking out old showers? That can be overcome by using shower panels, and of course, digital solutions and timer controls, which may be providing showers with fixed time flows. Again, trying to encourage people to think about how long they're showering. Flow rates of showers are mostly related to your water pressure on site. And typically through the UK, we come across showers in commercial buildings, which may be 5 and 10 and 15 years old in use, which are delivering upwards of 20 litres per minute on water. Technology is now here to deliver showers to the user where up to 40–50% shower reduction, water reductions can be achieved, yet still provide the shower user with a fabulous shower experience. The technology is there. For shower innovation, perhaps investigate the new Conti Comprimer shower, which removes the dead leg, which is always an issue in buildings, of mixed water and removes 2 meters of hot and cold water supply into the shower location. And mixing point of shower and head is combined in one piece, which is completely new to the market. Another option is also to have a cold water only supply shower, which links into your heating system and uses a heat exchange plate to warm the cold water to provide the user of the shower with a fabulous experience. Marcus? The challenge in any kitchen is one of continuous flow, whether that's business or domestic. Many people, my son included, like to keep the tap running to wash in a flow. And if you take a tap running at 12 litres, which is by nowhere near as high as it could be in a kitchen tap, run that for 12 litres and washing up for just 5 minutes, you're looking at using 60 litres of water. Whereas filling a bowl to wash up just requires 10 litres of water, a saving of around 83%. So functionality in the kitchen at home and in businesses is something to consider. One of the options there is to consider a hybrid tap, which combines both a sensor and a handle, which could be a great solution so that you remain washing with the flow method. At least you will stop flowing with no movement is recognised. The other option is energy efficient dishwashers. When we look at the development and technology that's coming through these days, an energy efficient marked dishwasher is not allowed to use more than 16 litres of water to actually have its criteria and its rubber stamp of its efficiencies. Older machines for dishwashing could be using up to 56 litres of water. So again, thinking about product selection, design selection in consideration of your users and a little bit of education is probably the best way forward. Marcus?
So thank you, Paul. What we've gone through there is just a snapshot of quick wins that are available. And I think really what we're saying to the audience today is look at your connected products and do an analysis of where you can make some very quick savings, not only on water efficiency, but then sit down and analyze the energy saving associated with such products being installed. And I'm now going to hand over to Jacob, who's going to go through the need for culture and behavioural change in how water is used and perceived. Over to you, Jacob.
Thank you. Behaviour change is important here. So water saving, as we said, involves a number of factors. And the simplest way to save water is by behaviour change with your staff. Now, given that the UK hasn't had very high level of domestic metering for a long time, your staff might not even know that businesses are charged on the meter. So at home, they may leave the tap running and it doesn't cost them anything. They may not know that at work, there's a cost associated with that. And there are several reasons why you should try and create a water saving culture in the organisation. And what we've seen is that simple things like turning off the tap, not wasting water, can reduce consumption by up to 30%. It also means you'll have energy reductions. And it also feeds into the way that your staff feel about the workplace, the way that they deal with customers, and the ethos that's established. So it gives a good understanding of the way water is used. Now, in terms of staff awareness campaigns, we've done several of these types of programs before, and they're quite simple. They're communicating with your staff why it's important, the stuff we were talking about before about water cuts. It's communicating how much simple actions can save, and it's talking about the way you would spend that money. So I remember doing a program with the Met Police once, and we talked about savings, not in terms of litres, but in terms of how many extra police you could have if you only filled the kettle up for the number of cups you were boiling, or if you turned the tap off, or, you know, if you put in dual flush toilets, that sort of stuff. So it gives people an idea of how it benefits them and the overall business. And the bit about getting staff to submit water saving ideas, rather than imposing this down from the top and saying, right, we're going to have these new taps, it's a much better idea to talk to your staff, ask them what their water saving ideas are, and get them to adopt and in fact call for water saving kit. And you need to do it both at the boardroom. I mean, Marcus and I have talked a long time about taking water out of the washroom and into the boardroom. You need to talk about this at a boardroom level so it's got full buy-in, and you need to talk about it throughout the whole organization. And as it says there, this applies to your supply chain, your visitors and your customers. If you're seen as a company that values water and the environment, that will add to the overall ethos and understanding of what your company is. And it's becoming more and more important. I don't know whether you've seen recently, but a whole load of investors in the fast food business have suddenly called for a 10% reduction in water use. So you're seeing insurance, investors, these types of people expecting to see businesses to be doing stuff on saving water. Next slide, please. And then the next bit, wasting less water. This is extremely important. So we've touched on the sort of products we can provide. There's some numbers here, I won't go through them all in detail, but the amount of money that you can save through simple actions on water are enormous. In terms of detection, probably the worst leak, the simplest leak, is a leaking toilet or a dripping tap, and they're very easy to see. However, there are other hidden leaks, and I would say that 100% of businesses I've seen have a leak somewhere. Now, we're linked in with Aguadio, which has a leak sensor that can look at leaks of all sizes. We also have an interesting no-dig leak detection system. So we can do all types of leak assessment, pinpointing the leaks and fixing the leaks. There are also leakage allowances. So if you've had a leak that's been running for a long time, that water hasn't been going into the sewer, so you shouldn't have been charged for it. So we can work with your water supplier to ensure that you get money back on that. So quite often, these leak detection things pay for themselves very, very quickly. And as I say, almost every business will have a leak. Next slide, please. Behavior change. So we talked earlier about the importance of behavior change. One of the most interesting ways of saving water is what we call facilitated behavior change. So Aguadio also have a shower sensor that gives people an idea of how long they're spending in the shower. And it's been shown that those simple prompts that help change behavior can, again, save water 13%. We've got there. In fact, there are larger levels than that because it has a knock-on effect on other water saving. If you're understanding that water saving in the shower can be reduced, it then has a knock-on effect that you'll look at toilet flushes, not leaving the tap running, all those sorts of things as well. This is a very cheap and simple way of encouraging behavior change and making a direct saving, both in water, but also in energy, because obviously shower water is heated. Next, please. Intelligent water management systems. Okay, this is where all the AI and machine learning that people have been talking about for a long time is actually starting to be applied in water. So if you think about smart business tools for building management services, there are quite a few of these now that are starting to look at monitoring water systems. And that can be in terms of flow, it can be in terms of temperature, and it can be in terms of usage. So you can look at where the high use areas are within your business. You can also, by detecting anomalies in patterns of water usage, you can detect leaks, but you can also detect things like temperature, which is useful for hygiene. So these intelligent water management systems, integrated with a lot of the products we talked about before, will give you a really intelligent system for managing water across your whole business, which will deliver savings, cut leaks, and again, we'll link back into the behavior stuff. Next slide, please. Paul, do you want to talk about the Conti taps and the intelligent management systems there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Conti developed a system called CNX Water Management System, which is a building site-wide management system. It mentions on the slide about up to 150 connected products. In truth, it can be many more because you can network more than one system together. We have an example down in Bristol where we've worked on an academy school, which has in the region of nearly 500 taps and showers and kitchen taps connected to it. Why would you want a water connected site system? It fundamentally gives you control. It helps the site management team understand their building, not just from a water perspective, but also from a heating perspective. It can identify and improve the water hygiene, which is very important to stop the buildup of biofilm within your building. Biofilm is the cause, or partly of the cause, of debris in the water, feeding bacteria, feeding on that, which then can lead to Legionella outbreaks. So understanding a heating system can accommodate with things like thermal flushing and hygiene flushing features to ensure your waterway is clean and avoid stagnation is absolutely vital to some organisations. The system will also identify any inadequacy in your hot water supply. So for example, if you wanted to do a thermal flush of your showers at a given time, you may come in the next morning to find the thermal flush has not succeeded. And it's not succeeded because your hot water temperature didn't reach the parameter that you've set, i.e. 56, 60 degrees. If it falls short, it'd be a failure. Not a failure on the system, but identifying that hot water isn't hot enough to achieve the outcome that you really want. The system can also identify infrequently used product so that you can actually revise your protocols and change hygiene flushes or remove products to reduce risk in your water system. The benefit of CNX came into its own during the COVID period as well, where engineers weren't able to travel to site. So remote connectivity via the cloud and IP solutions can also help reduce man hours on site, which is a labour cost saving, and also reduce travel to lessen the impact on the environment. We actually have a case study on our website for an academy school in Bristol. It's definitely worth checking out. And finally, on the water management system, just to say about building management systems, this can be connected into a building management system so that your management control becomes one and the CNX system becomes the tool to affect that from a routine maintenance point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul and Jacob. And this really brings us on to this slide here, which is quite dear to me, being a mechanical and electrical engineer by training. It's all about planned preventative maintenance. What we've gone through earlier is businesses tend to be reactive in their maintenance, but if you've got a planned preventive maintenance structure in place, not only will you know what your cost centers are, you'll know exactly how much water is being used for things like hygiene controls, water hygiene management. We would really encourage businesses to have this culture of staff reporting issues. A lot of companies do. They set up an email or an intranet where you can actually advise the facilities management team where attendance is required. And also make sure you've got loggers and meters in place so you know exactly what your water footprint is, your benchmarking. It makes it much easier for engineers to manage a PPM regime and also get equipment professionally installed, because a lot of manufacturers now, they will, as part of their deliverables, will provide after-sales support, often free of charge or for a certain period of time. And also a lot of manufacturers, if they know a product's been professionally installed and commissioned, they will willingly extend warranty periods as well, which is quite important. So preventative plan maintenance, you know how much it's costing you, you'll have happier engineers, everything will be managed, the building will be efficient, and the image you'll be portraying to your staff visitors will be excellent. I'm now going to hand over to Jacob, who's going to go through pillar 3 of our webinar today. Over to you, Jacob.
Thank you, Marcus. So reuse and recycling. So as I said, there are 3 pillars. So integrated water management. This is basically ensuring that you look at every aspect of your water, and we're going to touch on it later on. This is water coming in to the business. This is how water is used within the business and how water leaves the business. Now, there are various ways of managing the water that comes in, but what we also need to look at is how do you manage water within your business almost as if it's a natural water cycle. So we need to think about when it rains, are you just putting that water straight into sewer, which you're being charged for, and you may also be being charged for runoff, or have you thought about things like ponds, swales, rain gardens, ways of slowing down water, which some water companies will also compensate you for because it reduces flooding? Have you looked at green roofs? Have you looked at rainwater or stormwater harvesting? We're also going to touch on greywater and other water reuse and recycling. And we can also talk to you about, should you maybe be getting your water from a borehole? Next slide, please. Okay, rainwater. We all know what this is. A large number of businesses, particularly warehouses, things like this, have a very large roof space. And they are being charged for the rainwater that falls on their roof or their car park and goes into sewer. And at the same time, you're buying water. And if you need low-grade water for toilet flushing, for cleaning, or for some elements of manufacture, why not catch that rainwater and reuse it? As I say, it also has a benefit for reducing flooding. There are a whole range of rainwater systems that you can use depending on roof space, the needs of the business, and how much water there is. Now, in order to engineer the tank, we have partners who can basically size the tank depending on your roof space and your use. There are also pumps. There are also things called first flush systems, which make sure that all of the debris and stuff on your roof doesn't clog the tank, which reduces maintenance. The thing about rainwater is it's something where we have to assess it almost on a case-by-case basis. And this is where we talked earlier about an overall water-saving strategy. Maybe rainwater is the best option. Maybe the best option is a whole range of water-efficient devices. Maybe it's a boiler. It depends very much on your local circumstance. But I would suggest that every business should consider rainwater harvesting. And that's from a large out-of-town warehouse right through to even a small business on the high street, where they can look at swales, rain gardens, simple things like that. Even a water butt. A water butt is in fact a rainwater harvesting device. Next, please. So smart rainwater harvesting. So this is what I talked about when it attenuates water flow. So there's something called a hydrograph, which is like the peak of how rainfall occurs. So you imagine sudden storm water. It runs off your roof really quickly and causes flooding. Some water companies are now talking to businesses about having smart rainwater tanks in place. So what the rainwater tank does is looks at what the weather forecast is going to be effectively, empties the tank early on, and then has capacity to take the peak off this storm hydrograph, which reduces flooding. So when you think about putting in rainwater, you also need to talk to your local water company, your local council about whether there are grants associated with that, basically to compensate you for attenuating stormwater. It sounds complicated, but it's not. It's fairly simple. Okay, reusing stormwater. There are obviously issues around here about clogging and filtration and treatment. There are also issues, for instance, if you have a yard where there's drainage from that yard and it's going into a watercourse, you'll need permits from the Environment Agency. It could well be that by using attenuation chambers or rain gardens or bioretention, you can reduce the chemical load going into a watercourse, which could reduce your costs for that. Likewise, you could do the same with trade effluent charges, which are being charged by the water company. And there are quite sophisticated ways of doing that. But in general, any company can look at that. And then greywater recycling. So greywater is, so there's different types of water. There's blue water, which is effectively rainwater. There's black water, which is the stuff that comes out the toilet. And there's greywater. That's the stuff from showers, baths, sinks. Now, you need to be careful with sinks sometimes, because if you're in a catering environment and you used it for washing knives that have been used to cut meat, that could be more contaminated than normal greywater. And this is why we're here to help you to talk through those different options for different systems. But effectively, greywater takes shower and bath water, or it can also take industrial process water, cleans it, and then reuses it for things like toilet flushing. And there are some quite simple systems that take the 30% of water that's used for showering, and this is in a domestic context, and use it for the 30% of water that's used for toilet flushing. And similar things can be done within businesses. But what we would need to do is to do an overall water audit, looking at where your water is coming from and how much you're paying for it, what it's being used for, and where it's going. Because with greywater, you'll save not only on water use, but also on wastewater use. So there are, as you can see, there are lots of different forms of greywater. And then the garden. So this is something that businesses don't often think of. So most businesses probably say, well, we don't have a garden. But quite often there is landscaping, there are water features, there are simple things like having to wash down roads or car parks and that sort of stuff. So outdoor use is actually quite large for a number of businesses. And that's why we say you should always analyze water features. And when it says consider evaporative loss, this is because there are two different types of water feature now. There's the traditional old fountain that you get, very, very high evaporative loss. And there's more the trickling effect. So quite often, if you go to modern hospitals and things, you'll see a water feature which involves water trickling. The amount of water use there is low, but you still get the amenity function. The use of drought-tolerant plants, the use of mulching, the use of proper irrigation systems, the use of living walls. And the advantage of things like living walls is you can reduce your heating and cooling bills as well. You can reduce your sewerage costs. And as we talked about before, storm attenuation is really interesting. So there are lots and lots of options for outdoor water use reduction, for reduction in sewerage charges, and potentially for grants from water companies or the Environment Agency. So it's an area that isn't often looked at, but should be. Air conditioning and cooling towers. Now, there are different types of air conditioning. As it says, some use water, some don't, depends if it's adiabatic or not. The maintenance of air conditioning units that use water is extremely important. Likewise with cooling towers. So quite often we see cooling towers where they have a maintenance contract, and basically people just follow what the maintenance contract is. Quite often that maintenance contract isn't looking at the total dissolved solids and is maybe replacing the water too quickly, or there's too much water loss from cooling towers. You could probably reduce water loss in both air conditioning and cooling towers by about 30% by looking at the way they're managed and looking at the systems that are used. But again, that is on a case-by-case basis. Next one, please. Importance of having a water management strategy. So I've touched on the words water management strategy quite a bit before. You think about energy strategically, you think about money strategically. What businesses should be doing is looking at water overall. So rather than saying, we need some new toilets. Well, yes, obviously EcoProd can certainly help you with that, but it would be interesting to see why you think you need some new toilets, how that fits within the wider context, and to look at the overall water use in the business. So next slide, please. So, right. So what are the benefits of a water strategy? Complying with regulations. So we're going to see, I mean, you've all seen the stuff on the news about sewerage. We're going to see a tightening of regulations around water use, around sewerage. We've also seen that there's been some talk about step tariffs, which is basically a variable tariff depending on how much water you use. So the more water you use, the more you're going to be charged. So there's a lot of new water regulation that's going to be coming in because, as I say, we're currently facing a water crisis. You're going to see increased costs. There's also a lot of carbon associated with the water. So the benefits of a strategy are it enables you to look at it overall. It enables you to look at cost reduction. It enables you to look at energy cost reduction. It's good for the environment. It's great for your staff. And it guides decision making. So you can say, okay, based on this water strategy, we think we should refurbish these washrooms because they need doing anyway. It will have a return on investment of X based on your assessment of costs. It will also reduce your sewerage. Or you could say, well, actually, what we need to do is to start looking at our trade effluent costs. So it enables you to focus your money and attention in the right areas. Next slide, please.
That just, I can comment,
sorry, Mark.
Jacob, that stepped tariff coming in is actually quietly a shock to the system, isn't it? Because traditionally it's been the exact opposite. The more you used to use, the cheaper it was. Affinity Water have just been allowed by Ofwat, who are the financial regulator, to bring in a reverse step tariff. So exactly as you say, the opposite of what's going on,
for domestic customers, and they're going to try and trial one for business customers. So small water usage will be a lot cheaper than large water usage. So yeah, it is completely the opposite to what people normally see. So people with large water bills, those bills will go up. So what is a water strategy? It's fairly simple, basically. It's the same as a financial strategy. Where does your water come from? Are you getting it from the mains? Are you getting it from a borehole? Are you using rainwater? What do you use it for? And what are the areas of your business that uses that most? So when we talked earlier about intelligent water management systems, that will be able you to target, hang on, this department's using this much water. It will also enable you to benchmark if you've got multiple sites and say, well, hang on, this site for the same allowable lettable area or the same level of production is using twice as much water as this site. Why is that? Then the next bit, where does your water go? So is it going down the sewer? Is it draining into the ground? Is it going into a water course? Could you reuse it for someone else? Are you on an industrial estate where you've got a load of low-grade water that you are paying to put in the sewer, but the business next to you has a whole fleet of vehicles they need washing, and they're paying for water to wash those vehicles? It's called industrial symbiosis, but we've seen this quite often where the wastewater from one business can be used as an input water for the other. So you're both saving money, but you wouldn't realize this unless you were doing a water strategy. And then the next bit, how much does each of these cost? What are the alternatives? And then within that context of this overall water management strategy, which is very simple to do, but also if you wanted, we could help you do this. It enables you to make much better financial decisions in the same way that you wouldn't spend money in your business without looking at your financial strategy. You obviously look at your books pretty much, every day. Do you do that for water? It's probably not even assessed once a year, or maybe it's never been assessed. So we're just saying a simple water balance for a water management strategy is a good idea. Can you improve what you've already got? Simple things like, are you paying the right prices for your water even? Have you thought about surface water drainage? Are you on the right tariffs? Then monitor and maintain your water management strategy once it's in place. So as we said before, you probably look at your books at least once a week financially. How often do you look at it for water management? It's worth just putting a small item on your board agenda to constantly look at water. It's good to have a champion for water management. And that will help you keep this live, and it will help you keep momentum. And also the thing you can do is feedback to your staff saying, we've saved this much water, it saved us this much money, we can do more than this. It's also very good in terms of advertising to your supply chain or to your customers. And there are lots of prizes and awards around for this sort of stuff because not that many people are doing it, and it will be essential in the future. And there's also, as I said, there's going to be restrictions on water use. If not this year, then definitely next year. They're coming very, very soon. And if you have already taken action, then the water company is less likely to restrict your use. So tracking the success, as we said before. So how do you know how much water you're using? Well, there's options for smart metering, online billing, all those sorts of things. Smart meters and the intelligent water management systems we talked about before will enable you to monitor and understand your water usage, so you know where you're using water and what the cost is associated with that. It will also enable you to see how much water you're saving by putting in these different measures. And then in terms of suppliers, this means water suppliers. So you'll all have a water company that supply you. They should have data that they can help you with. And again, EcoProd can help you talk to your water company. We can help advise you on what sort of things you should be asking. And all of this will mean cost reductions and the most efficient use of water and money within your business. Next, please. That's me done.
Can't hear you, Rachel. No sound.
Oh, Rachel, we can't hear you at the moment. I don't know whether anyone else can.
No, I can't.
No, I can't.
Okay, well, the questions one is fairly simple. So there've been a few questions on the Q&A, and we can go through those. If there are any other questions, you want to type them up now, and we can address those. So some of the questions that came through, and we've been answering them as we've gone along, but Paul and Marcus, there might be some other bits you want to add. There was a question on hippo bags, saver flush bags, that sort of thing. Using those in cisterns, obviously they're useful under certain circumstances, but if you put them in the wrong cistern, they can lead to double flushing, or they can block the cistern. What's your view on these?
Yeah, you need to be very careful. Water displacement devices in existing equipment, obviously, traditionally, when manufacturers manufacture sanitary ware, a cistern volume is usually matched to the WC pan that it's going to operate with. So you do need to be careful with displacement devices like hippo bags, because we have seen clients that have gone wholesale and installed them everywhere throughout their organization. It's actually caused more maintenance because of blockages, because there's not enough volume, because the pans installed are designed to be flushed with a certain volume of water. Don't know if that helps.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, yes, we can, Rachel. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to leave and come back again. You just asked the question about cisterns, I think, did you?
Yeah, we were just working through the questions.
Okay, so there was another question that came in about that Jacob answered, that was somebody who wanted some help doing kind of a water strategy audit across their buildings and offices. Jacob's suggestion was that person gets in touch directly, but I wondered if one of you could talk a little bit more about that, because we've had a couple of questions along those lines.
I think probably over to you, Jacob.
Sorry, yeah, the simple answer is yes, but it does depend on it. They are site specific. So please get in touch with us. We're very happy to discuss your needs and the specific site. And quite often, you can do a lot of these things yourself. So there are consultants who will come in and say, oh, yes, we'll do a full review, and we'll definitely do that for you. But what I would recommend is talk to us first, and we can tell you what the simplest solution is. And it might be that you need a full audit, but there might be some fairly simple approaches first.
Can I jump in there as well, Jacob? When you're working in a co-work space with a managed service and property managers, that's quite a frequent meeting for us on a weekly basis, where the management company aren't always aware of the demands of the users, and the users don't tell the management company that what they want to make improvements on. Whereas as a collective, if we get together and identify any improvements that can be made, and then there's a shared shared benefit in doing something, that communication can actually be overcome really quickly, and a better resolution can be found. So yeah, get us engaged with you as the co-work space and with the management team, and we can sit down and discuss how we can make improvements.
Okay, thank you. There's one that came in asking if there are grants and the like available in any particular areas for water saving retrofit or water saving programs. Do you know of any?
That's a great question. Yes, it depends on the water company area, but at the moment there are grants available in Cornwall, where the drought is quite severe. We're also currently in discussions with Southern Water, where we are helping them devise a system potentially for grants, and we're also talking to Anglian Water. But most water companies will be interested in helping in some way, whether it's a subsidy for kit or whether there are direct grants. So please talk to us, and it depends on your area. There haven't been very many in the past, and there aren't that many live at the moment, but it's something that is progressing as we speak. There are more and more coming up. So now is the right time to be asking that question.
Okay, thank you. Have you worked with restaurant chains, and what services can be offered?
Yeah, we work with a number of restaurant chains, both in the past and ongoing. Some high street names such as McDonald's, Burger King, pub chains as well. So we have solutions for all those markets, and we have experience of the user experience, because one of the things we find in both restaurant chains and maybe visitor centres, museums with toilets, etc., the environment of the washrooms needs to be improved, because one of the biggest critiques in that industry is the washroom facility. So yeah, we've got experience. We'd be happy to help you and look at best solutions for you as well.
Okay, thank you. Does the water type in the area affect any of the products any of the products that you can use? For instance, you know, hard or soft water areas.
Do you want me to jump on that one, guys?
Yeah.
You're on a roll.
Yeah, absolutely. The issue with products installed and water in the UK is, yeah, there is a variation in hard soft water across the country. Some areas have no scale buildup, other areas have intense scale buildup. This is, in fact, some of the products we have can enhance that position from a maintenance point of view, but this comes back down to good PPM, good solutions, and good product understanding through training that we deliver. We were on a site this week actually where they got some scale build-ups where they have actually had products installed for nearly a year, but actually not maintained them properly. Through a simple 5 and 10 minute exercise demonstrating the product, what they should be doing on a more frequent basis, especially in hard water, overcomes this issue. So it's a little bit more investment on time, but that's also something that EcoProd can help with, because we can provide those services to eradicate that issue in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Oh, hang on. Are there any newsletters that we could sign up to that would keep us up to date? Well, there's ours.
They're quite frequent as well, Rachel, aren't they?
Twice a month, our newsletter. And we try and keep it as educational as we possibly can. You know, we try and gather materials from third parties to put together those newsletters. Do you have experience of working with golf courses and the challenges of irrigation on those?
Marcus, I think you should take that one.
Yes, we do. I actually want Jacob to jump on this on this one, because it's quite with what's happening in the water industry and what's envisaged could happen. Golf courses is going to be one of the first locations that water companies say they don't need to bother supplying. Is that correct, Jacob?
That is absolutely correct. Yes.
So that's going to be a shock to the system if a particular golf club hasn't actually thought about its water resilience, hasn't thought about alternative supply, hasn't started on the journey of a water management strategy. Because at the end of the day, it's the players that keep the club going. And
But interestingly,
go on, Jacob.
Sorry, interestingly, with what you've just said there, Marcus, there's water companies will, because golf courses are high users, water companies will be one of the first areas that water companies will look to cut supply to. But the things you've just said, if the golf course has already taken action on ensuring their irrigation system is as efficient as possible and looking at alternative supplies, they can say that to the water company, and that will reduce the likelihood of cuts. So basically, the water companies will reduce supply to those who haven't done anything first.
Yeah,
so if you're a well-behaved golf club, you're more likely to keep your supply.
Yeah, it's all about proof and evidence, isn't it? That you're being responsible.
Well, quite rightly. I mean, if you're a water company and there is a real problem around supply and there have to be restrictions or there has to be reduction in pressure, then yeah, you're going to go for the really high users or wasting water. And I think, I think the sorts of things that golf clubs can look at is irrigation systems. So optimizing, you know, making sure there's an MOT for your irrigation system on a regular basis. Have you got the right type of irrigation system? Have you looked at what's called Xeros golf, which is dry golf courses? So looking at different types of planting, different types of grass fescue. Have you looked at alternative water supplies, boreholes, lakes, streams, that sort of stuff? Have you looked at water recycling? Have you looked at rainwater harvesting? And also, have you talked to the water company about water efficiency measures? And again, we can help broker discussions with water companies, but quite often, depending on sort of what branch of the supply arm they're on, it could be variations in pressure rather than cuts that could be looked at. So there's a whole load of things, but it needs to be looked at holistically.
What support can you provide for planning applications, etc.? Who's taking that?
Is this a water neutrality question?
I was about to say, is it a question from Sussex? Yes.
In essence, yes, but we would need to know the context behind the question.
So
Okay,
in some parts of the country, there's something called water neutrality, where you cannot build a new development unless you offset that water. So no new water is allowed. And this is an area that we've been working on in detail. There are also grants available from water companies for reductions in infrastructure charge, which is the charge to connect to water and sewerage systems if you put in water efficient devices. But it varies from company to company. It's quite a complex patchwork across the country.
And Jacob, I think you should just add to that the fact that I think it's been mentioned already, we do have some direct relationships with many water suppliers. So depending on the location, wherever it is in the country, Sussex or otherwise, if you talk to us and help us understand what your direction is, we can definitely give you some good support and ideas to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing to point out is that water companies are having a lot of difficulty at the moment in managing resource, and they are really keen to talk to businesses and work with them to look at water efficiency and help where they can.
Absolutely.
Right. I've got somebody here who says they've got lots of problems in their building, but no idea where to start. And then I've got another one that's kind of related to that, which is, where do you think the quickest wins are? They're kind of the same sort of question.
Do you want to take that one, Marcus?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. It really comes back to what we were saying during the webinar about starting with a water management strategy, finding out what your connected products are, what your water use is. If you haven't done any benchmarking, well, you need to do benchmarking as a start to find out exactly where you are, where you're using water, and generally, you know, what is happening. And depending on the size of the organization, I would say appoint somebody that's passionate, put them in place as a water champion, and start the journey. I think the thing about what's behind that question is the fact the question is being asked means that person wants to start the water strategy journey. So I think that's a good sign. So that's square one.
Yeah. I'll just add to that as well. I recently received an inquiry on my desk asking us to supply them a quotation for a rainwater harvesting system. They'd identified that there was a need for them. So I made contact with them to actually ask how they got to that conclusion, to ensure that any advice, guidance, consultancy we gave them was good practice. It transcended that. Most of their building were using very old equipment with manual taps, large cisterns flushing constantly through the days, wasting so much water when the building wasn't even being used. And through calculations, through discussions, the need for a rainwater harvesting was eradicated. I'm not saying it should be totally excluded, but for that initial consultation, their first thought was, because they hadn't had the time to benchmark and understand what was required, in some very simple, quick wins, we were able to identify to them a better way forward, and then look at it holistically with their building for offsetting other water demands in their buildings for garden, washing vehicles, etc. So talk to us and engage with us, and we'll help you.
Okay. That was the perfect one to end on. I don't think I've got any more that have come in. There's nothing else on the chat. No. Okay. Well, thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. I will get this recording processed for you and an email out to you. It'll probably be later today or first thing tomorrow morning, and that will have a link to the full video, and the slides and what have you will all be available to you. Thank you very much to our panel today for your presentation, and I hope we see you all again at one of our sessions or in a one-to-one meeting at some point in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
for
everyone.
the questions.
Have a good day.